right, I think we are online and live. Hopefully you guys can hear me all right. I see a lot of chatter. That's good going on. Um, Let me just check with my Wyzant team here. Make sure I'm being heard okay. All right, we're good to go. Well, thank you all for joining and making a little time this evening amid this very chaotic situation that we all find ourselves in. I am Drew Geant. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Wyzant. And I really appreciate you guys making some time. I know it's a very scary, sort of anxious, uncertain time for all of us, for public health, for the economy, and of course for education. And I know that on a personal level, many people, including I'm sure some of you, are dealing with some very challenging circumstances. Thankfully, on my end, my family is healthy and safe. As you may know, Wyzant is based in Chicago, and we are in Illinois under a statewide shelter-in-place order right now. So all of our employees have been working from home and doing their best to manage childcare and all the other distractions, but doing a really great job of keeping everything online. And I guess just a little bit about why we're doing this. I just feel it's really important right now for everyone, not just within Wyzant, but everyone in society, to communicate and be accessible and share information. And so for us, that definitely means being in touch with our community of tutors. So that's why we're here. And this is our first try. Hopefully it's useful. Hopefully it goes smoothly. And if so, we can certainly do it again, because unfortunately, I have a feeling this COVID situation is going to not be going away anytime soon. So my plan for this is to just go through a few different things. First, I want to provide a bit of an update on the business, what we are seeing from our vantage point, and then talk about what we're doing in response so far, and then offer a few tips and suggestions of things that you may want to consider for managing your business through this time. And then finally, share a bit of my outlook on where things are headed and what the impact might be for Wyzant, and then field a few questions. So targeting maybe 30, 45 minutes altogether. And, logistically, obviously, feel free to use the chat. Sounds like that's happening. We will try to answer questions. Of course, we're not going to be able to answer all of them, but we plan to follow up with a blog post where I think we can post a link to this recording. And then within the blog post, we'll try to answer some of the other questions that we didn't get to. So let's dive into the business update. I think the headline for all of us, is that with respect to Wyzant, we're very lucky. Even in a crisis like this, education remains very important and people will continue to prioritize it. I think we're also very lucky that tutoring can be done online, and that we are now in a really good position for that to happen, with the majority of the tutoring happening online even prior to COVID. Had this happened 5 years ago, when only 15% or so of our business was tutoring was happening online, I think it would have been a much tougher situation. So very thankful for all that. We know that students are going to need more support throughout this, and that's another thing that we will ultimately benefit from. The timing of that is sort of to be determined. We're still kind of dealing with a lot of volatility in demand and consumer behavior and usage over the last couple of weeks, which really isn't a surprise when you think about all the school closures and the tests being postponed, and grades becoming much less important in the last couple of weeks as people were dealing with more urgent matters. As I said in my email update on Friday, our kind of leading indicators of demand were down about 30% over where we would have expected them to be last week. This week, they're a little bit better. And in the last couple of days, even a little bit better. And I should also, I think, expand upon it, because while demand, as in new customers coming in and looking for tutoring as measured, by different metrics, is down, the actual volume of tutoring is not down by that much when you look at the number of lessons that are occurring. So there's a few, I think, insights there. One is the people who are coming to the site and contacting tutors are going on to convert and become students at much higher rates than we've seen before. So I think the intent is high among the people who are coming to Wyzant. And then I think existing customers, from what we've seen, are using Wyzant more actively, as well as some older customers that have used Wyzant in the past coming back. So those who are familiar with it as a resource are leaning into it, which I think is a good sign. And this may be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but when it comes to what you can do as a tutor, certainly I would suggest reaching out to old customers, even current customers, offering, suggesting ways you can help, maybe even above and beyond what the things you've done in the past. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And so while overall the impact so far to the business has been negative, again, it's not actually that negative when you look at the lesson volume. It's more about new students coming in. But even within that, it's very inconsistent. And in fact, we did a survey about 100 tutors, and 40% of them said that their business is up. And so when we look into it a little bit more detail, what we see is it depends a lot on age and sort of subject and kind of demographic profile, I think, so far, as to what's up and what's down and what's unchanged. And in particular, I think the biggest segmentation that's worth pointing out is the difference between college and K-12. So our business is about a third K-12, sorry, I should say a third high school, a third college, and then K-8 is a bit less. But what's happening in college is that the universities are under a lot of pressure, and they have a lot of financial incentive to push the students through to complete this semester. And so these students who have been sent home, their studies have been pretty continuous. And of course, they don't have the support system now that they did when they were in school, but they're still expected to complete their assignments and get grades and get through the semester. And in the case of seniors, graduate. And so the pressure is still there. The support system is not. So I think we're seeing an increase in demand among the college segment. However, when you look at K-12, it's sort of the opposite, right? Where schools are not prepared at all as a whole for e-learning. Classes are kind of non-existent so far. It's a lot of, email. It's a lot of course packets. It's a lot of, frankly, kind of like try to stay busy with resources while we figure out how we're going to do this. And certainly in the midst of all that, grades and tests have all been postponed. So the sort of pressure that typically drives tutoring to complete an assignment or to prepare for a test has been sort of reduced in the short term. Now that will increase as schools kind of get their act together a little bit more in the coming weeks. But that's been one of the key distinctions we've seen so far. A couple other trends that we're seeing. Obviously, the lessons are happening online, right? 97% or something yesterday of the lessons were online. So for all intents and purposes, the in-person tutoring business is essentially non-existent, and I would kind of think about it that way. So obviously, if you're not offering online, that's step number one, is to make sure you're set up for that. There are resources on the site. Customer support is very helpful as well if you have questions. So make sure you do that. Another thing we've seen is that the lessons are happening a bit more during the day, which is not surprising since students have time and parents are looking for ways to occupy them. And obviously the learning has become very self-directed all of a sudden during the day without schools being operating. And so, I don't know what that means for you guys in your schedule, but just kind of be mindful of that trend as well. Some other things we learned in the survey of tutors, one is that tutors are really playing the role of teacher. If in the past a tutor largely was filling gaps and helping support students where they had extra needs, now it's sort of the whole thing. It's teaching the concept, it's explaining the assignment. In some cases, it's delivering, really coming up with an entire curriculum for students that have been left kind of hanging. So the role of the tutor seems to have expanded. And the nature of the engagement, from what tutors tell us, is a little bit different. Like the tutors, students and parents are looking for more enrichment. And there's a degree of kind of empathy and reducing anxiety and providing structure that is a little bit different than in the past as well. Some tutors told us like they're having a lot of success just try to do something fun, like learn something for fun that maybe has nothing to do with what your assignment is, and they're seeing a great reaction from students who sort of crave that right now. Another more kind of practical implication of all this, where tutors are filling in, is around organization and study skills. So if these students are given a giant course packet with no direction, expected to navigate through it, they really need a lot of help with prioritization and scheduling and structuring their approach. And so tutors are filling that gap as well. So let me pause there because I need to catch my breath and have a drink of water, and I'll see if there are any questions that are pertaining to the business update. All right. I'm having trouble following the chat here. It seems like there's one question at least on moving students to online. One thing that we were talking about that so we know that some students are resistant to moving to online. One thing that we'd be willing to do is if you have a student who's resistant to moving online, tell them that if they're not happy, that you'll give them what I'm trying to say is we will honor, not you, but we will honor Wyzant the good fit guarantee for students who were historically in person and moving to online. So just try to get them to try it, because as those of you who do online know, it's like once they try it, they generally really like it. Let's see, it's another question here. Somebody's talking about apparently, I mean, this is always an issue, right, where students are looking for tutors to do assignments. Please let us know if you see aspects that are in violation of the honor code, and we will for sure lock those students' accounts. That's too bad that that's what we're seeing happening. Some people may be struggling with the online tool in terms of latency. We are not seeing any. We are monitoring it a lot more closely than we typically do, and tracking a lot of usage data, and making sure that the platform is has uptime, and all that seems okay. What we've seen, even just among our people who are working from home, is that a lot of the networks that we're on, our home Wi-Fi and local Wi-Fi networks or internet networks, are being jammed up with all the people working from home. So obviously a lot of this depends on just access, or broadband and internet speeds on both the tutor and the students. All right, I'm seeing some questions actually that kind of lead me into the next section here. So let me do that, and then we'll come back to other questions. So the next section is, what are we doing in response to all this? What is Wyzant doing? So one of the things I personally have been working on, and is right away when this all started happening and school started getting shut down, it became very clear to me that the people who are going to suffer the most are low-income students. Unfortunately, those are the ones that aren't going to be able to afford to get the extra resources. Many of them, don't have the sort of support system at home, or even even a comfortable, safe place at home. So what I wanted to do out of the gate was find a way to help that population. So what we did was we set aside $100,000 for tutoring for low-income students, and we've been partnering with Chicago nonprofits and schools, including Noble Schools, which is the biggest charter school system, other nonprofits like Chicago Scholars and Braven and Kids First Chicago. And so we're getting a lot of low-income students who would not probably have ever used Wyzant now coming through the platform, which is great, obviously, to help that population, and also, the secondary goal there being to drive volume to students. So that's one thing that I'm really proud of, and I've been spending a lot of time on partnering with these organizations, and just really excited to see that traction picking up here in just the last couple of days. Another thing we mentioned on the email on Friday is that we waived the 9% service fee for students that you refer to Wyzant. The goal there, the intent is to allow you to use Wyzant and the tool and any other aspects of the system you want for any students. They don't have to be Wyzant students for free. If we can, get more students sort of what they need to be successful, whether they're part of Wyzant or not, that's the intent. Another benefit is the hours you accumulate through that program will actually help your profile and help your metrics on Wyzant. So that's kind of an added benefit. We are collecting and publishing a variety of content that we think is going to be helpful to students and tutors, trying to, take what we can see and what we're learning and offer that information up to others in the broader community. And then there's been some questions here that I saw that about what we're doing to drive more students. And so this is kind of like the main thrust of it. I mean, the nonprofit commitment we made is a small piece, but frankly, that's really about the social impact that we can have. In terms of how we're trying to do it at scale, we for sure are looking at this as a time to increase our marketing activity. And so we're making pretty significant investments in all of our existing online marketing channels. We are spending a lot more per student. We are willing to do that even at a loss in some cases, just to drive volume, because we have a hypothesis that those students are actually going to use more tutoring than they would historically. So we're willing to pay more there. We're also doing we're about to launch a variety of new campaigns in different channels, such as podcasts, paid online social and other online media, the places where we have not actually done a lot of marketing before, because what we've realized is that unfortunately, people, while they know they need something like Wyzant, they don't quite have the mental model of online tutoring. You guys have seen this in all your interactions with students that, what is online tutoring? They think it's video, or they think, or like asynchronous or something else. And so they're not necessarily searching for it, right? Which is obviously where we historically get a lot of volume, is people searching for tutoring. And in fact, all the people that were searching for tutoring before with the pretense that it was local tutoring are now not searching because they realize that local tutoring, in-person tutoring is not viable right now, given social distancing. So to combat that, the marketing we want to do is about building awareness and about, informing and educating people that this service exists, letting them know that you can hire a tutor on Wyzant, work with them online, that it's easy, that it's affordable. And so that's the sort of marketing we're doing, which is much more like awareness and brand building stuff that we haven't done historically as much of, but we're putting significant kind of capital behind that. Again, realizing that we want to come out of this stronger. We want to come out of this with Wyzant being something that more people discovered in their time of need, and so that on the other end of it, we can hopefully have a tailwind to build on. So even though business is a little like we said, volatile in the short term, we're making the choice to invest despite that, because I think that's the right business decision. And of course, it's good for the network, it's good for the marketplace, and good for the tutors. Another thing we're doing is you've probably heard us talk about the partnerships, and you've probably worked with some students through our partnerships with universities. One of the things that universities are facing right now is some pressure to rationalize, frankly, the tuition that their students are paying, because they're paying it for a variety of things that they're not receiving on campus. So we see an opportunity there, and we see a need there to support these students. And universities seem to be a little more inclined to offer something like Wyzant in the interim. So we're seeing a lot of activity on the partnership front. And then of course the other thing we're trying to do here is just this, and to try to be communicative and accessible and transparent. So expect more emails and more webinars if this ends up being useful. So those are some of the things we're doing. Why don't I just finish up my prepared remarks, and then we'll switch over to questions because I was having a little trouble going back and forth before. So that's what we're doing. Now I just have a few things on what you guys are. Okay, I guess there is one question. Somebody on Wyzant is telling me that's coming through a lot is about the fee. All right. So I believe the question is, are we going to reduce our fee? So here's the deal. We have to make trade-offs, right? We have a certain amount of resources that we can, do different things with. And, Wyzant is not some giant company with piles and piles of cash. We're a small company. We operate very lean, as you guys probably know, who have been on other tutoring sites and services before. I recognize it feels like we take a lot percentage-wise, but it's actually way less than the other main competitors out there, like half as much as they take. So we're already sort of operating on a lean margin. And what we're trying to do here is all of the investment we are making, we're putting into marketing to try to drive new students. So I would love to, trust me, I would love to make it free. Like I would love to cut every fee. But obviously that's not like a practical thing for us to do as a business. And so the extra capital that we are deploying, we are putting into marketing, but we are not at this point considering changing the fee structure. So I know that question has come up in the chat. All right, onwards. So some suggestions for tutors in the meantime. Obviously, you got to move online if you're not already. Another thing is, because of sort of what we're hearing in terms of the nature of the actual tutoring changing a little bit, what I would consider doing, and you're going to know better than I am because you're on the front lines here. But remember, you can edit your profile. You can change your bio. You can change your subject descriptions. I mean, I'm sure a customer support team who reviews this stuff is going to hate me for saying this, but I think you can even have multiple profile titles, right, per each subject. So think about this in this world we live in now with COVID and everyone working from home, and now all of a sudden parents are trying to find something to keep kids engaged. Even adult learners, those of you who work with adult learners, are looking to learn things for fun. They want to learn a foreign language or whatever it may be. They have extra time on their hands. But let's go back to the more traditional student learner. They need somebody to provide all that structure that we were talking about before. They want enrichment. In some cases, they need like more original curriculum to learn something from scratch. So if you can make your profile and your title speak to that and talk about COVID, like this is a real-time thing. It's on everyone's mind. Don't be afraid to address it directly in your profile. So that's another tip. Another one is to consider doing some proactive marketing. Contact your former students, like we were talking about before. Promote yourself on social media. Reach out to your schools. I think somebody was saying that they're seeing all kinds of requests coming through Nextdoor, where people are like asking their neighbors, do you have any tutor recommendations? So whatever neighborhood you're part of, you can join Nextdoor and get in there and say, hey, yeah, I can help you. So just, it's a time to be proactive would be the other thing I would suggest if you're looking to add new students right now. All right, so wrapping up, as we kind of look out a little bit beyond just our immediate situation, no one can predict how this thing's going to play out, obviously, but I have a high degree of optimism, let's say, if not confidence, that in the long run, there are going to be real benefits here for Wyzant. So for one, students are going to need more help. Come this fall, students are going to have real knowledge gaps. They're going to be behind, and they're going to need support from tutors. Two, in this situation where schools, not through any fault of their own, but have sort of left students to dry in a lot of ways, I think everyone is going to realize that they need support outside of schools. They're going to try tutoring, they're going to explore new resources, and I think there's going to be a new appreciation for the role of tutoring. Another thing that for sure is going to happen is people are going to get more comfortable with the idea of online tutoring. out of necessity, as well as they're going to get a lot of exposure and practice using Zoom and FaceTime and Skype and everything else, such that they realize that, hey, this isn't such a bad interaction after all. On the partnership side, for sure, schools, universities, and other institutions are going to be more keen to partner with somebody like Wyzant, who can provide services beyond sort of what happens in the classroom. And, so I think there's a lot of tailwinds coming out of that. But to be fair, there is one major headwind coming out of all this as well for everyone, including Wyzant, which is the economic impact. We know that we've already seen the jobless numbers this week, millions of people losing their jobs every week at this point. So there's going to be pressure economically on people, and certainly some people who may have pursued tutoring before, will be unable to take advantage of it as a result of that. So that stinks, and I think we're all hoping that we can get through the economic turbulence here. But that will stabilize, and we know that we will come out the other end of this, and the economy will start coming back. And so again, in the long run, I think the positive vectors for Wyzant outweigh the negative economic one. So let me just close by saying, like, this is unprecedented, obviously. And we're all trying to figure out what can we do. And the reality is we have an important role. I really believe that we are part of the solution here on the education front. And, I know we internally at Wyzant are feeling very motivated and inspired to what can we do? How do we step up and do our part right now? And I also know, just from talking to so many tutors over the years, and in particular the last year, just how committed and passionate you are about the mission of helping students. And it makes me feel good to know that we are playing our part right now. And I just have no doubt that you guys, the tutor community, is going to step up and rise to the occasion. And I feel good that we are doing something that matters. And I just want to thank you for you guys are the ones that are really, really doing that work and making a difference. So that's what I have for my first ever webinar. I will flip back to the chat and see if I can peel off a few more questions. All right, how can I learn more about the online tool, and what can Wyzant do to help me learn about it? Oh man, I wish I had someone on my customer support team here. We will for sure reference this in the blog post. There are lots of resources where you can get exposure to the online tool. You can experiment with it. You can do a demo room. There's resources online, and again, we have customer support folks who can help with it as well. And we can, as my colleague Elaine just said, we can do a webinar about it as well. And, we can maybe even bring in some tutors who are very prolific online tutors to show best practices and stuff. I think that's a tremendous idea. Now I'm making promises that someone else have to figure out how to do. All right, guys. Well, listen, I'm going to sign off here. I appreciate again how you making time. Let us know if this is useful, so we can do it again if so, and we'll do our best to stay in touch, to continue to try to support you in the marketplace. And thanks again for all the great work.